What's up, everyone? How's it going? Welcome to today's market analysis and trade recap episode. Today is Friday, May the 30th, and we were actually able to take two very nice quality trades here today. One was a winner, one was cut break even, and we almost hit our take profit by one tick on that trade. So, decent day here today, and let's dive straight into the factors that caused me to take these trades, and we'll discuss the overall context of what happened here as well today, potentially even analyze some further pivot points using Footprint and Bookmap. So let's dive straight into this. And before we get into that context, I do want to highlight that at 9 a.m. we did have University of Michigan news, which was medium to high impact news at 9 a.m. So we would not trade on this candle and this candle because that is a 5-minute range from 8:55 to 9:05. That is when we don't trade. Now, let's dive straight into the context that made us take these high quality setups here today. So what we're seeing on ES was that yesterday we saw that imbalance from that Nvidia news get filled. And overnight we didn't really see anything crazy. We just consolidated around this general range, and it makes sense because this is the range that is very close to that high volume node when you extend the volume profile out. And I'll give you an example of that really quickly. Just extend it here. I think that should be good. Yeah, but as you can see, lots of volume being put here right around that range. I know it's not the easiest to see, so I'll see if we can move it forward and see that. Yeah, we can. So you see how volume is majority at this level, and that is inside this overall range that we had been trading overnight. Things line up like this for a reason. Market wants to be at a fair auction value. But what we noticed during that time period was we had liquidity there, equal highs liquidity here, which is okay. And we also have liquidity here and liquidity that was created from before this overall crazy move down here. And all of that is marked on the 4 hours, so all of it is of the highest importance, and these are main liquidity levels. Now, we do not really know if we're going to head towards the upper liquidity levels or the lower liquidity levels. We could easily head to either. So what do? We wait for expansion at market open and see continuation signals to potentially target the upper barrier or the lower barrier. And that was the reasoning that allowed us to succeed. If you take a look at NQ as well, the overall context is going to be similar. As you can see, overnight we chopped around this range, and then we chopped around this range. And the one thing that was in addition on NQ was we had these zones. We had a 1 hour supply zone there, in addition to a pretty big 2 hour demand zone here, but we kind of took that out of our brain because we have this liquidity level in the middle of it. So what we're valuing is this liquidity level, the 50% line, as well as VWAP. But like we said, pretty similar to ES in overall context. Now, if we get into the time right around market open, we see that market opened and started falling towards the downside. And you can see this here on Bookmap as well, right? Shout out to Alex with Think with Bookmap, great resource. His link is in the description. Highly recommend you guys to check him out. It's a great resource to get started on Bookmap, and if you have Bookmap, you can analyze your trades as well. But after market open, we saw price start to come down with pretty good strength. And honestly, there was no trade setups at all from that 9:45 to 8:55 area. Potentially, if you go forward, there could have been a setup here at 8:55. This is EDT, I'm CST. Keep that in mind. but there potentially could have been a setup in which we could have done something like that. But we are in that 5-minute area and interval with that 9 a.m. University of Michigan news. So we are flat, and that played in our favor because if you take a look, price bursted through this barrier, and for the remainder after 9 a.m., we continued to head towards the upside until we swept our Bookmap liquidity. Now, we continue to go up, and if you take a look, because of that 5-minute interval, there was honestly no trade that we found in our interval time. We were chopping between two barriers here, but what we noticed was that we're generating a lot of liquidity here at 5920 over 160 contracts. So this is definitely a key area where price may want to target. You just keep that in mind. Now, no trade setups here. We're still trading between two barriers. One thing that potentially could have got us to entry here was this heavy buying icebergs at that area. But if you take a look, we do see decent seller absorption here at these highs as well. That's not seller absorption, that's active seller inclusion, my bad. But we saw heavy sellers coming in near these highs. But overall, no trade setup here because not there. No trade setup here because we're effectively trading within two barriers. Let me go back to there just so we can make it clear for ourselves. Wait. We were chopping between two barriers. We broke out towards the upside after seeing this high iceberg amount. And we see lots of volume here near the lower barrier around 5907. That was in previous candle. So no, we did not see any absorption here with confirmation on footprint. That was a reason that we would not have entered there. But this buying icebergs is very significant. Potentially, we actually should have and could have got an entry here. I don't think we were attentive enough to truly make a hypothesis from that. But maybe an entry could have been found there. I'm just trying to think real quick. We see this happening. And then we break out towards the upside. Now, honestly, I do not think that this would have been something that we would have taken because we're trading tightly between two ranges. We broke out towards the upside, so now we know that we can continue heading up. Now, this is a point of time where we actually find the setup that made us take our first trade. And what happened was after this breakout of this upper barrier, we're so close to this 5920 area, and typically when we're so close, we just tap into that area and then we notice reaction there. But we're so close to that barrier or to that target, and we start coming down. But look at what's happening to our passive buying barriers. You see how it's moving up? Now what that is telling us is there is active passing buying going on. Let me repeat that once again. There's active passive buying going on in the market. So that is showing me that lots of individuals are placing limit orders to try getting a good entry for these longs. And that could be potential institutions as well that will actually move the market. So we see that happening, and at that area, what we also see, as you can see here, is when we start coming down to that area and we start tapping into that area, we actually see a decent amount of seller absorption happen. And you can notice that here on the footprint charts on the right. See a large amount of seller delta get put in with 2000, with the volume of 2000, and we start pushing back up and we see this high buyer delta get put in as well. We see buyers now coming in aggressively after the seller absorption, and you can notice it here. And now buyers are starting to come in. This would be a great entry in terms of value as well within this recent range to capture those longs to target this 5920 area. Now, we do have this liquidity preventing us from heading towards that 5920 area, but this looks to be that it's simply market maker liquidity, and with the momentum that we've been seeing going on, this should take us to those highs, but if we do see absorption here, we will get out. So once we started seeing those buys come in, we entered. Additionally, there is a low volume node here or order flow fair value gap. We tapped into that as well, started heading to push up. This candle, we see clear absorption towards the downside and we start pushing up. We got a pretty good entry on this as well. Our initial stop was here, which was around 17 ticks, putting our initial risk reward at 1.53. But we saw price move up, and then once we saw price move up, buyers started coming in. Now we headed towards the upside, and then if you take a look here, we actually rejected from that area. But then as we rejected, our barrier continued to move upwards. If you can see how this is looking now, passive selling is moving up and passive buying is also moving up. If this continues to move up, we should get these 5920 levels in no time. And because of that, we stayed in the trade. Now, if this did not come up with price, it's likely that we would have stayed in the trade nonetheless, because we do have this buyer supporting barrier here, or we could have exited around a break even there, or not break even, a bit in profit, simply because we had retraced after touching this area. But because of how the market reacted, and because of the fact that volume was decently distributed here in that 920 candle, in which we saw both seller activity and buyer activity, we stayed in the trade. Now moving forward, wait a minute. Yeah. So now as we start moving forward, what we see happening is that price is continuing to move up, as you see, and as we're moving up, these barriers are moving up as well. Now we're so close to the 5920 area, but if you take a look, it might not exactly be 5920. It could potentially be that 5919 area. And if you take a look at what happens right here, we effectively get to our take profit, but miss it by exactly 1 tick. If we look on the footprint chart, we're not exiting this trade because buyer barriers are moving up, and as we're tapping into these seller barriers, they're also moving up. If we had broken this buyer absorption area, then we would have exited. But since our trade had gotten validated with the factors that we were given, our trade played out nicely. Now, we almost hit our TP by 1 tick, but bears are still moving towards the upside, so we are still in the trade. And now here, finally, we hit our TP. Now, we learned a good lesson from this trade, and let me tell you what. We came to this level. This level had large liquidity amounts. But did you see how that level with large significance was getting spread? That is really typical of many liquidity levels. If you take a look, we have 50, 74, and 228. and that is across a distributed area. When we started tapping into that area, we should have sold. But in this trade itself, since it had not gotten taken with that 220 contracts, we can say that we can stay in the trade. But to be on the safer side, it wouldn't hurt to put our take profit 1 point below or $1 below, just to ensure that our take profit hits and we don't get pushed back by almost one tick towards our take profit. So that's a lesson for the future, but this trade still held because of that significance, and it played out pretty nicely. Now, let's dive straight into the next trade and cover that pretty quickly. Now, this trade, what we noticed happening here at these highs were that we're tapping into this large liquidity level here on ES. And same thing on NQ. We're not really gaining much from NQ as well. It's just following how ES is moving along. But what we see happening is, take a look at what we're seeing on footprint here. The 2 points where we tap into that upper barrier or that upper magnet on Bookmap. Tell me what you notice with delta and volume here at these two candles. We see large amounts of buyer delta being initiated at these highs on this candle, but that's not that significant. We just see that happen and we notice it. On this candle though, we close at these highs. We make a large buying delta here at the top with a majority of our volume. Then in the next candle, we start flushing down with strength, as you can see there. Now that strength does seem to be pretty significant. We start to see imbalances within the market. So that could have been a potential area for a retracement play, but it's of low confidence simply because there are levels above and potentially we could retrace back up to that level because there is still liquidity there that might want to get broken. But one thing that truly solidified this for us was the fact that you will see now. We continue to go towards the downside. Now, what you can see here is that we created this barrier here, and we're also creating liquidity here at 5905. So now we actually have a target. Before we did not have a target, even though we saw absorption and aggressive selling. Now we actually have a target here at 5905 with over 100 contracts. We see that absorption occurred, and I'll show you that on the footprint chart as well. But take a look at what is happening around those highs, especially here, this 945 candle. You see a large amount of buyer absorption. This is honestly one of the most clear signals of buyer absorption in combination with Bookmap once it loads, as you can see here, that you can see. You see this barrier being there, buyers stepped into that barrier and are unable to break through, even though they're coming in with over 4,000 or with around 4,000, no, with 2,000 units of volume. They're unable to break through. This is a very clear indicator of buyer absorption in the market, and it works out with that reversal idea that we had before as well. We saw buyer absorption there, sellers started coming in aggressively, and now that we retraced, we saw seller absorption again. We saw and understood that passive selling barriers are now moving down, which is a bearish signal. And our targets are also moving down. So we have bullish factors within the DOM or Bookmap. We validated One, through initial seller absorption and distribution through this initial downwards move to validate the reversal. But we also have a retracement that comes in and shows us that heavy buyer absorption is happening with that retracement barrier. Now, once aggressive selling started to take place here, that is enough for us to enter. We saw selling start to come in. We entered around 5912, which was when we actually started to come down, I believe. Let's see. We entered around here when we actually started moving down after seeing this big buyer absorption here. And even in this candle, we started seeing heavy move towards the downside. I'm pretty sure on the 1 minute time frame there, it was much clearer to see. Ooh, we got cut off by data just by a little bit. No, wait, did we? No, we did not. We can actually see it. Awesome. So let's take a look at what happened there. I'm heading there. Just give me 1 second. But yeah, as you can see, right around 9:50-ish time. Just take a look at these candles first of all. We clearly show that we retrace into this fair value gap-ish area. But look at these candles right here, right? Buyer absorption, buyer absorption, buyer absorption, selling starts to come in. And this is buyer absorption with volume as well. You can clearly see that. In the next candle, we start to push down after seeing this buyer absorption. And we get our entry there. And initially our stop loss was up there. And the reasoning for that was that is where this barrier that we saw absorption was located around 1.5-ish level, but we kept it a tick above that just to be safe. And we saw price play out our trade pretty nicely actually. But unfortunately, what we saw happening was that price did not want to hit our take profit. We literally got to our take profit, but missed it by exactly 1 tick. And that's where that one point rule comes in from this trade as well. If we simply had placed our take profit 1 point above this area to be conservative, placed it around 5904, our take profit would have hit nicely. But we came down until 5905.75 and our TP was 5905.5. And the liquidity was at 5905-ish area. We can't really tell from here. So we learned that it's always good to underestimate the targets in terms of Bookmap so that we can actually be conservative when it comes to our take profit, but still take profit at a good level. After that, as you can see here, we started seeing buying come in with a decent amount of strength. On the 1 minute, you can see the strength with much more significance, but we saw decent amounts of buyer delta just start coming in after we saw selling get cut off at the area right near our target. We also started to see potential absorption here at this level, but that occurred, we started coming back up with strength. Right when we saw that strength occurring, we exited for 2 ticks in the loss, essentially break even. So we managed risk decently on this trade, but one thing that would have made it better, just keep it 1 point above our estimate, because we have to be conservative when it comes to finding these levels on Bookmap. But honestly, that's going to be it here for me today. I live analyzed and reflected these trades here with you guys. We talked about the reasoning for this trade because we came back into a passive buying barrier and we were very close to our liquidity. So we played our trade out. We almost saw invalidation, but since the distribution of barriers were moving higher and higher, we just rode the wave until our take profit was hit. What happened in this trade almost happened in this trade. But since these barriers were moving higher and higher and this level had significance that had not been taken out yet, we held on this trade and it played out pretty nicely. Now for this trade, to summarize and to recap, we simply saw a reversal ideology play out. We saw a retracement that occurred to prove that, and the distribution of barriers moved down with the price, and we actually had a target now here near VWAP. So we simply took a short once we saw absorption here and price started reacting from that area, went to our take profit, missed it by 1 tick, would have hit our actual stop, but we cut it early because we saw that occur. So pretty good risk management, need to follow that 1 point underestimate rule. But that's essentially going to be it here for today. We analyzed the factors that resulted in these trades that we took here today. We also overviewed the entire context here for today. And we reflected on the things that we could have done to not get TP edged on this candle and almost with this candle. So all things that we learned here today, we analyzed this with Footprint and Bookmap, and that's going to be all I have here for today. If you have any questions, highly recommend you guys to join the Discord server. The link is in the description down below. There's a lot of resources there. I'll be happy to answer any questions there. And I highly recommend you guys to join because everything is completely free. You can also leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to answer your questions there as well. But if you want to start practicing with Footprint and Bookmap, you can take advantage of the links in the description down below, because you can start practicing with Footprint even today. Even though it has a 15-minute delay, you can still start practicing and backtesting using that Footprint chart, all because of Addis for completely free. Highly recommend you guys to check it out and start practicing with it. Link is in the description. Bookmap link is also in the description. Highly recommend you guys to check it out. But that's all I have here for today. I'll likely see you guys tomorrow and Sunday for some educational videos alongside our pre-week analysis session. But I'll see you guys then. Goodbye.